Hey everyone, April Cox here. Did you ever just wish you could have a session where you could ask a guru anything? Well, we have got a treat for you today. Bryan Cohen is joining us. He is a guru in so many different areas, and we have just what the doctor ordered. So stay tuned. You won't want to miss this. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to have you. And I am really excited today because one of my favorite self-publishing gurus, Bryan Cohen, is joining me today. I love the fact that he is a former improv comedian, and you may see that in some of his responses as well. I think he definitely shows that, a little bit of that personality. He's also an author of many superhero novels, as well as a lot of other types of books. He is a Blurb CEO, Best Page Forward. He's the person, the guru that I'm always going and reading more about when it comes to creating or updating my description because it's just not working for me. He is an Amazon ad guru. Many of you have probably sat through his Amazon ad challenges, many courses and author trainings. And he's also a co-host of Sell More Books podcast. Bryan, we are so happy to have you with us today. Tell us a little something that we don't have here in this slide that nobody knows about you.
Well, thank you for the wonderful introduction, and thank you everybody for having me. I really appreciate it. I think that what isn't here is that I love the kind of job, the work, the business that we all get to run as authors. I think that it allows me the opportunity to drop off my daughter at school every morning and make dinner for the family. And these are things that I really get to do all the time and that I treasure. And I think that that is probably another thing that a lot of y'all love about the author world, is that it does provide some wonderful freedom. And it's one of my great purposes in this world to try to help authors, folks like you, to make sure you don't leave any money on the table, that you are getting as much profit from all the hard work that you put in as possible, because I really want to make sure that you make a go at this and that it is successful for you.
Oh, amen to that. And we love you for it, Bryan. Thank you. When I started to pull together a list of what kind of questions would I have for Bryan, some of the stuff that really popped into my mind is I've got a few specific books among some others that have just really puzzled me in the children's book arena. They're really high quality books, but for one reason or another, they're just not taking off really well with sales as we would have expected. So some of the authors are on with us today, and I was hoping, with your permission, we could kind of jump in and take a look at their Amazon listing and see if you, the guru, could help us kind of get some ideas on what we could do to improve the way that these books are perceived and perhaps even get them to move forward with some sales.
Sure. Happy to look.
So the first one we're going to start with is Alice Eloise's Silver Linings. Let me just kind of give you an overview, and then I'll let you take it from here. So
Sure.
Beautiful cover design. One of the things that I've kind of stressed with my students is some really nice A+ content, which really take advantage of some of the conversion factor, mobile devices, and just providing that extra little bit of push so that people understand what the book is about, what the values are for the book, and get to see some extra internal images as well. What's the best way? Are you able to kind of read the thing here, or do you want to kind of touch on some of the generalities of what you would look for in a listing like this?
Sure. Well, I think with children's books, it's just so important right off the bat to signal to your readers what is the age group. And I know that there are settings. It might even be if you hit the caret to the side of dimensions. I'm not even sure if the age group now, it's not listed there. And I think that could help, especially if it is going to be targeted at kids of a certain age. Is this for toddlers to have read to them by their parents? Is this for early readers? Is this in kind of the 6 to 9 range? Is it the 9 to 12 range? And the thing I just chatted with a client the other day who did the old, well, the age range is 10 to 110.
Right.
And I love the idea of that because that is with this desire to reach everybody and their mother and their grandmother, right? But the problem is if someone is looking for a gift for their granddaughter, for the friend who's a third grade birthday party they just got invited to, what are they typing into the search? They're typing children's book, girl 9 to 12, or children's book, girl third grade, or something. And when this information is missing from the listing, which could be in the subtitle, it could be just in the description, it could be certainly in some of the author central type content, or even in that A+ content that you mentioned, April. If that's not there, sometimes it might lose out on some of those searches, and it might lose out on the glance test. When you buy something, sometimes you just take a tiny little glance at it. And if in a glance you can't tell this is for 10-year-olds, then you might not make the purchase. Now, there's a lot of positives to this book listing. The reviews are stellar. The pricing seems right for children's. I mean, certainly if conversion rate is ever an issue, and conversion rate is how many clicks does it take for someone to buy the book or read it from cover to cover? If the conversion rate is not making this book profitable where it is, all bets are off. Like, try a slightly different price, try a slightly different subtitle on the Kindle version. You can't really change a paperback version, subtitle after. But the thing I want to look at, and I'm interested, April, could you click over to the Kindle edition as well? It's just something I wanted to check out. Okay. Could you click the read more for me? Notice this is pretty well spaced here on the Kindle edition. Now click over to the paperback and let's have everybody compare. Take a look at that paperback edition. We lost the spacing here, and it's tough to read that wall of text. We probably want to double check wherever that paperback formatting is coming in from. It could be from the listing on KDP. It could also be on the listing of Author Central, depending on where you actually input the description. A little bit of extra spacing could be helpful there. And so I think the two things I see, if you want to make minor changes, would be getting that age range in there, which can be input both on KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, or it can be input into the subtitle or the description. Could even be a story of a silly service dog for such and such age range. And then adding some spacing to the description. I would say that more intensive things you could do. I mean, I think the cover is beautiful. It can be a little hard to read script type font. So it's tough because it's a very pretty cover. But is it a little bit hard to see when you see it in the tiny, tiny thumbnail version that readers are going to be seeing? Potentially. Okay. Second thing I'll say is the description. I love in the blurbs that we do for Best Page Forward and the blurbs that we recommend, especially when it comes to children's books, to have kind of a little explainer paragraph. Alice Eloise's Silver Linings is a picture book, is an early reader book, is a et cetera book for kids in 3rd through 5th grade or whatever you decide there. If you like, I love that if you like this, then you'll love that. If you like beautiful illustrations, if you like portrayals of service dogs in action, if you like et cetera, then you will love Sarah Catherine Frey's heartwarming tale of a girl and her dog. The nice thing about that framework is it gets the brain kind of thinking like, oh, I do like that, and that. And then if that is the case, then you will love this particular book. So those are the deeper dives. And I think all the A+ content is beautiful. It might be a good idea to test with and without, just because there are so many great reviews here. The A+ content does widen how long it takes to get to the reviews. As we saw when we got stuck a little far below, it took a while to scroll up.
Oh, yeah.
It also takes a while to scroll down. I mean, it's very pretty, but it's always a good idea to test these things, test the kind of before and after, just to see what the conversion rate ends up being, because there could be a surprise in store. Maybe with only one A+ image, it converts better than with 4 A+ images. But we don't know until we test, which is why I bring up the idea of testing.
Well, there's one other thing that the author and I have talked about, because especially as we were targeting ads and things like that, and some of these are common throughout the 3 that I'll show you. It's service dog, people that love dogs, people that love service dogs. It's also a portrayal of a disabled character in a children's book, so there's that. It's also positivity and gratitude and looking on the silver linings. So we kind of feel like, gee, what do you focus on with your listing? Is that another part of what you would do with your testing as well?
I think you certainly could. I mean, the tough thing is you want to test for a month or for 100 clicks worth of ads in order to understand how well did this go before and how well did this go after. But you need to think like a mom, think like a grandmother, think like a friend buying a present. And what is it they are going to be focused on? Maybe it is the dog. Maybe it is the angle of the child with disabilities making strides in their life with this service animal.
So let's go on to the next one. This is Ari the Brave's Jungle Journey, and another one that I think struggles a little bit with identity crisis. It was written as part of when she was in the hospital with her son. She kind of imagined that Ari was, as he drifted off for surgery, was going off on this brave adventure. And it kind of wrote itself while she was in the hospital. However, it's also about bravery. It's about accomplishing things that are hard. And it has a lot of affirmations. It has a lot of great stuff here. Some beautiful, A+ content also, and a teacher's guide and things that can also incorporate teachers and classrooms in the mix as well. Any thoughts on this one, Bryan?
A couple of the similar things with Sarah's as well is just that if we do have anything that we think could be also used in the description that is in the A+ content, even if it's just phrasing it a different way, I think that could be helpful. Something I'll focus on a little bit different than on the first one, so, guys get lots of interesting angles today, is I love having in a description a call to action at the end. What is a call to action? A call to action is actually telling your readers to do something. And you can tell them very, very nicely to scroll up, click the buy now button, click the read button, buy today to watch Ari overcome his incredible journey today. Like, I'm a big fan of that being the last thing you leave readers with in your description. I mean, if we were to take an informal poll, and, this one is like obvious kind of answer, but if we were to say the last line of this, the book also includes a helpful page on additional resources for helping children understand medical terminology, or if the last line was buy Ari the Brave's Jungle Journey today, what do you think people are going to be left with more of the action of doing? Are they going to think, oh, that's interesting about the additional page, I think I'll click buy? Or if you actually tell them, go buy this, are they going to be more willing and able to make the purchase? And it's tough. Us authors, this is a problem for everybody who runs a business. Us authors do not always like talking ourselves up. We do not always like saying, hey, go click, go buy, go do whatever. But when you overcome that, and it will need to be overcome, when you overcome that feeling that you're being sleazy or the feeling that you're being ingenuine somehow by actually asking people to do things, you get to do it in your book description. You would get to do it in your emails that you might send to your readers, because every email you probably want readers to do something, whether it's leaving a review or whether it is buying a book, or even if it's just reply to me with some answer to a question. When you get through that, that can be extremely helpful. Now, with this particular book, this is another one where I think the cover is beautiful, still might be a little bit hard to read the title on a thumbnail size. And maybe that takes one quick trip through Photoshop to fix. I'm not entirely sure. But it's already the red font on the blue background. It will stand out. It just maybe needs to, because Jungle Journey is actually pretty easy to see with the white on the green background. So those are little things we can keep in mind. I think that this description is formatted with a little more space, which is really good. And once again, similarly to the previous book, if we can get an age range, you can tell I think about ads all the time. Age range on this book, because I'm not even certain if you scroll down a little bit, April, because it can be listed there. Let's click over to the Kindle.
You're right. It is. It's there on the Kindle.
Yeah, but my apologies if I gave that advice in the previous one and it was not actually accurate. Never put 18 plus with a paperback because you'll immediately be categorized as erotic. But April, is there anything else on this one?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a clarifying question. We hear about hooks and, an opening, the first sentence opening, the job is to get you to read the second sentence. And could you speak a little bit about hooks and how they might apply also to children's books as we're setting up our descriptions?
Absolutely. So I think we have a tendency with children's books. I have a funny recollection of an author who sent us everything that his book was about, but we knew nothing that happened in the book. And it was like, here are all the grand ideas. Here are all the wonderful things that people will learn from it. But we had to go buy the book and read it and flip through it to actually know what happened. And when we did, we were like, oh my gosh, this is so great. I wish we would have known who the main character was, what they wanted in this book, what was in their way, and what are the consequences of them not getting what they want. And those things, what the main character wants, what's in their way, and the consequences of them not getting what they want, that makes up the framework of the typical hook that we write, even for children's books. We don't necessarily focus on the lesson right away. Mm-hmm. So for this one, it might be along the lines of Ari has 4 more weeks in his hospital bed. He wants nothing more than to go home. How will he shore up the bravery to overcome his incredible journey? Something along those lines where it's just like, and that was too long. Like I would have to cut that down and shorten it eventually. But what the character wants, what's in their way, and then what are the consequences? And for this one, it might be, can Ari stay brave enough? In a thriller, the consequences would usually be someone dying. In romance, it's usually will they or won't they? But in children's books, it's usually more almost like a spiritual thing. It's low stakes from a context of all of publishing, but very high stakes for the main character, who's usually a kid. I have a 4-year-old. Everything is high stakes. Everything is very high stakes for Riley. I know that.
Wonderful.
That's what I would recommend.
Do we have to worry about if somebody doesn't click read more in your call to actions down there? Do we need to think about prioritizing things to be more toward the top of your description? Or if they don't get that far, they're not going to pay attention to the call to action anyway?
It's tough because, as you know, and as you aptly pointed out, you can't see the whole description and you can't see the end of a description unless you click the read more button. But I would say at this point, Amazon customers know what to do. So it's not a matter of them not knowing how to get there. The nice thing about the call to action is that it's a gentle encouragement to go do that action. It's not such a thing where if they don't click, they won't know what to do. So, that's a very good point. And it's tough because I've seen a lot of descriptions that have their best line after the read more. Which is why, and I'm glad you had me go through it, April, it's why that hook is so important, because sometimes it'll be the only line of your description that anybody will read. So it better be very good.
All right, let's see. We've got one more here. This is Puppy Pete's Imaginary Jungle by Rachel Hills. I love this book because it is so unique, and there's not many times that I can find a book that just really makes me think, wow, I've got to get that, because as a children's book author and collector of children's books, it's so unique and different. So this author has created a story that is all illustrated with actually crocheted illustrations. She crocheted them. She took the pictures and she tells the story about Puppy Pete, who is absolutely adorable, and his jungle adventure and using his imagination. So I love this book. It is one that sold wildly at the beginning to her followers, because she has absolutely a ton of followers who are her crochet followers, and then nothing.
Yeah.
So once that big push at the beginning and all of her followers got the book, we just are having trouble finding the audience for it to appreciate what we have here. And there's a little bit of confusion, I think, Bryan, because is it a pattern book? Is it not a pattern book? Is it a children's book? So there's a little bit of that kind of confusion, I believe, going on with this book as well.
I think that could be. And I think that is one of those things that can get clarified in the subtitle for the book. See, this is interesting. This is the paperback version, and you do see the reading age. So there must be a way to do it one way or another. But I would love a subtitle here, like a story for kids, blank through blank, told through crochet, to clarify what this is, because some people might consider this as being a pattern book. My mom is a big quilter. My mother-in-law has quilting patterns out there. So I know that there are pattern books. And so we do really need to clarify. And this is the challenge with anything unique. If it looked a little bit more like everything else, then you're set, because, people know what this is from a glance. But when there's like, oh my gosh, there's this crocheted puppy on the front, like, what even is this? And that stinks, because you think like, oh my gosh, I'm a creative person. I'm trying to do creative, incredible things. But if you get too creative, people may have a difficult time figuring it. Now, that doesn't mean don't be creative, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't use your wonderful ideas. But let's talk about a couple things we can change here, and then we can go with how might we go about marketing this book maybe a little bit differently. The Kindle and the paperback prices are abnormal.
Yeah, Amazon has lowered the book. The price for the paperback's $12.99. I believe they're liquidating maybe a couple of returns or something. And that's why we see the paperback at that low price.
I imagine when Amazon lowered the paperback to this strange amount, it also price matched it for the Kindle version, which is why the Kindle version is also $4.12. So they will do that sometimes. I'm not certain if that's the reason. I would try to maybe change the Kindle version to be a rounded price just to see if it gets folks excited. The description is very good. Maybe leans a little heavy on the bold, a little bit, because it's kind of one of those, if everything is bold, nothing is sort of thing.
How did we do with the first line here? What we were trying to do is let people know this is a picture book with crocheted illustrations. And we're trying to clarify the confusion. I could definitely see the benefit of doing that in a subtitle instead of the first line here of a description.
Right. Yeah, I think as a subtitle, it might work better, because we still want to look at that story from the beginning, and that can clarify things too. If we see this puppy Pete's wants and what's in the way and what are the consequences there, if we see that in the hook, perhaps this can help to clarify exactly that this is a story right from the get-go. I do love that the age range is in here. I think that's really good. I wonder if we run ads, we try our best, we do what we can with this, and we keep promoting, but scroll down a little bit for me. So here we are. And look at this, customers who also viewed this item also viewed. I noticed this right from the get-go. They bought yarn and they bought this pattern book, which, hey, there's some of that confusion right there, because the cover for this pattern book looks very similar. But these are the people who are in this audience. The people who buy yarn and who go to stores to get patterns and crochets, they are the ones. So if we are in the situation where we already know the audience, we've tapped into the emails, do a sale every so often, could we potentially be reaching out to stores on a regular basis that sell patterns and say, look at this cool book I have. It's a great gift? Because ads, I love ads. I teach about ads because I think it's the best thing since sliced bread. But there also are instances where if you're running ads and you can get sales through other channels, it can start to boost the ads a little bit.
Right.
Other thing I'll point out while I'm on this wavelength is 99.9% of authors should not be advertising their books to other categories of things. They should only advertise to books. This might be one of those weird 0.1 percenters where we might consider targeting some knitting related keywords and some knitting related categories because, hey, this might actually be the audience and they might not be looking for books right off the bat.
Right.
I don't usually give the 0.1% advice, but it's hopefully helpful in this case.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge here, and I'm going to ask a little bit coming from, Amazon ads and Amazon understanding more about the book. And because I think this has contributed a lot to the confusion around this.
Yes.
So as I mentioned, this author has thousands and thousands of followers that follow her for crochet. Yeah. They love everything she does. They bought her book. So say she sold, a couple thousand copies. Now, Amazon sees all these sales from crocheters, but the average crocheter is looking for pattern books, not children's books.
True.
So all of a sudden, Amazon's feeding it to crocheters. Mm-hmm. And they don't want the book. It's not feeding it to people looking for children's books. My theory is, having all of these people that are there just because it's Rachel's book and they love Rachel and they want to support her. There is a pattern in the book of Puppy Pete that they can make themselves. But I feel like, how do you unconfuse Amazon? Yeah. After all this has happened and it's done and over?
Well, if that's the case, if you're also bots, if you're in the system as a crochet book, then it's very specifically targeting children's books and never any crocheting things because you don't want to mess with it. It's also one of the challenges if you run a multi-part business. Hey, I write children's books. I wrote crochet books. Let's advertise the children's books to my crochet people. Uh-oh.
Right.
We start to get into the system as the wrong kind of book. This would absolutely happen. And this is one of the things you want to avoid. I have previously used discounting websites like 99-cent deal kind of sites for some of my nonfiction. This was a big mistake because my nonfiction was specifically nonfiction for writers, but it was getting put in the same emails as cookbooks for keto and probably parenting and therapy books and all sorts of stuff. And so Amazon just was like, I have no idea what to do with this book. And that's the thing you want to avoid. So how you dig yourself out, very specific targeting. I know a lot of multi-authors who have these multiple different ways of publishing. They will never cross-pollinate. They refuse to cross-pollinate those books for fear of the also bots getting confused. And for this reason, you always want to use a pen name for one of those two types.
Okay.
Always. Chris Fox, Joanna Penn have told me, Joanna ended up going with a pen name, but Chris has told me, I wish I hadn't done my nonfiction books and my sci-fi books under the same name. And I wish the same for my superhero books and my nonfiction books.
Okay.
Food for thought.
So at this point, now that this has happened, we don't want to just write the book off because it's got so much promise. So would you put extra dollars behind the right keywords?
Not extra dollars or higher bids. I think it's just patience. I think it's just take it over the course of 3 to 5 months. Hey, your body has new cells every 7 years. Amazon will have new also bots after a couple of months, and you do your best to do it, and you just avoid temptation because it's like, ooh, I have 3,000 crochet lovers who could buy this book. I could make more money this way, but it's not so good for the Amazon system.
Maybe cross-promoting with some of her colleagues on the children's book arena. Okay.
Yep, absolutely. That would work.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the slides I've got here. And some of the stuff next I just wanted to talk a little bit about is just ads in general. They are complicated. Many of us have been this woman here with hand wringing and head in hands trying to figure out how this works. And I think it's been more complicated because so many of these ad challenges and things that are done focus geared more towards novels and other types of books. Right. And I'm seeing you now with your ad challenge, even saying, and children's books, you might want to do it this way. So thank you for that. I'm actually really appreciating the fact that you're providing a little bit of extra guidance for children's books. Could you give us a little bit of information around what types of things would you do differently if you were advertising a children's book that might help us to set up our ads?
Absolutely. So basically, this is the reason we started giving a different guidance to children's books is because a few of our children's books authors, they were putting in a certain bid that we would recommend, usually in the 30 to 35 cent range, and their ads were blowing through money like crazy. And we said, oh, it does appear that children's books, you can get a lower bid and usually get traction. And I'm not sure if y'all have had that situation with your books, but we have found for children's books and also low content books like journals and how-to guides, workbooks, etc., you can usually start at 15 cents in the US store. And you could go lower internationally, but we would usually recommend, especially books, and I saw the 3 that you showed here were in Kindle Unlimited, especially with books in Kindle Unlimited, going with that low bid, in part because, hey, if somebody reads your book in KU and it's 30 to 50 pages, you are not making a whole lot of money off of less than half a cent per page.
Right.
And so in order to be more profitable, you would want to keep those bids low. Now, children's books, if you do end up getting a whole lot of clicks, you really want to go through your search term reports. This is something that you can get on the Amazon ad dashboard. You can get a report sent to you every month to your email so that you don't forget it. And this report tells you all the books that have gotten clicks, all the targets that have gotten clicks. If you notice you have a book for 7-year-olds and you notice, oh, Hungry Caterpillar for 2 to 3-year-olds is getting a lot of clicks, you can say, all right, well, I'm going to try to stop getting clicks on those books so that I can make sure I'm getting the most relevant, also known as similar clicks for my children's book. So age demo is going to make a big difference there because you want it to specifically target your particular age demo, which is why I talk about bringing in those into the subtitle as well, so that it's very clear from the beginning. This is for girls age 6 to 7, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, the tough thing is with the kids' books in KU, sometimes you can get it to be profitable just with those 15-cent bids. Sometimes you're hoping on an all-star bonus. You're hoping on getting enough KU pages that you might get a little kickback from Amazon at the end of the month or the following month. One client I work with was losing $50 a month from her ads, but then was cash positive a couple $100 once her all-star bonuses came in for being in the top however many in children's books. And so you definitely want to look at the numbers. And when you have multiple books in a series rather than just one, you may even be able to run at a little bit of a loss, but then people pick up your second and your third book in that series, and that brings you into profitability.
And lower bids at this time of the year, Christmas season, is very difficult, right? Because people are bidding up a lot of these terms. Do you have any tips for those of us who would like to try to get additional sales Christmas season? Would you do anything different as far as the bid amount or any approach that you would recommend?
It's tough because you can bid a little bit higher, but I did this on stage at 20 books to 50K. So let's say this is your bid and let's say this is your profitability. As your bid goes up, profitability usually goes down. It's tough to find that middle ground. Let's say you're at 15 cents for a bid and your profitability is pretty good. And you're like, all right, well, it's Christmas. My conversion rate might be a little better because people are looking. So you raise the bid a little bit and hopefully that profitability at worst case just goes down a little bit. And at best case, it actually ends up improving because of Christmas sales. But certainly not doubling it. Don't use the up and down bidding. You want to keep with 15 cents if you can. And if you're very profitable, little bit by little bit. Let's go to 16. See what happens here. Let's go to 17. See what happens here. Because we don't want to say, oh, well, it's Christmas time. Let's double my bid. Shoot. And then the profitability goes from profit to loss. We just don't want that to happen.
What do you keep an eye on with regard to profitability? A lot of authors have trouble figuring out, how do I even know if I'm profitable and what figure am I keeping track of?
It's always royalties overall versus ads overall. And then you can look at it at an individual book by book basis as well. I always go to the KDP beta dashboard. So kdpreports.amazon.com. I always go there because it tells me my KU pages and my sales all lumped into $1 amount. And then I take that and I compare it to, well, how much did I spend on my ads? And if the royalties are higher than the ad spend, I'm profitable. And if it's on a book by book basis and all the books are profitable, when you compare those ad spends, I rarely turn off ads. I rarely drop bids. If overall it's profitable, I'm not going to mess with it because I don't want to mess with something that's working.
And if it's not profitable, we're making adjustments to lower bids, turn off ads that are not profitable, or do you particularly are surgical about the terms that you're adjusting or turning off?
I still like to wait until I get enough clicks to check my conversion rate because I need to know, all right, I'm going to do an experiment later. I need to know if I change a cover or a subtitle or a book description or any of the number of things we discussed today with those 3 books. I need to know what was my before, how many clicks did it take to get a sale, and my after. How many clicks does it take to get a sale now? And so I usually try to wait until I get about 100 clicks, even if I'm losing money, so that I can get a good amount of data. If it's like, I got 10 clicks and I got 0 sales, let's turn everything off. We don't know. Were those just 10 unlucky clicks? We get a lot more information from having 100 clicks. It's tough. I'm losing money. The instinct is stop the leak.
Right.
But we are not just trying to save a couple bucks here. We are trying to figure out, how can this book make me money for the next 5 years, 10 years? And if we have to take a temporary loss in order to get to an eventual, oh, I tweaked this thing, now it's profitable for 5 to 10 years, it was worth that 1 month where we lost a little bit of money.
That's really a good point. And I think I tend to be tweaking a little more than testing my patience level. Yeah, my patience. I'm like, I got to change this. Let me try that. Let me try this. I'm not waiting that 100 clicks. So that's a really good reminder. Thank you for that.
I've heard one thing that you have to kind of tweak and play with the ad in order to kind of keep it active. Is that true? Or when you say, oh, if it's actually profitable, just leave it where it is forever? Or what are your thoughts on that?
This is one of the interesting things, Sonia. There are differing philosophies in the Amazon ad world. And this, apparently, someone was on a webinar the other day saying, I don't like Bryan Cohen's thing. Buy my $700 course. I'm like, okay, I guess that's one way to do it. But there are different philosophies. And what I will say is sometimes the philosophies coexist. Sometimes they do not. Obviously, for me, saying bid as low as you can doesn't coexist with someone saying start at $2 and work your way down, which is another philosophy that's out there. Don't do that for children's books. Oh man, you will get so many. But this is one that I don't jibe with as much because what I find is that tweaking ads and trying to mess with them is a little bit of a more contracting thing, but I want to expand, like more ads, get more ads and campaigns into the ecosystem, because we've been able to find sometimes that having 5 to 10 consistently new ads every week sometimes does inspire the algorithm, if a computer can be inspired, to do more for you and get you more clicks. But I know some people have used the philosophy of tweaking the ads as well. Sometimes I will add $1 to a budget just to see what happens. I usually don't mess with the bids too often.
Are keyword ads more effective than category ads for children's books?
Most effective ad I've seen for children's book is an auto ad. Caveat, the book needs to have its keywords, like the 7 KDP keyword phrases and the subtitle and its own categories, very, very accurate, just very close to the demographics that you want to be targeting. If you're like, I'm going to try to get number 1 in this one category, even though it's not a really good fit, that can be detrimental to your auto ads because the auto ads use all that information in order to direct what targets it's going to send to. And so I have seen auto ads go wild on children's books. And in part, it's because the author took extra care prior to creating the auto ads to make sure it was very dialed in. Could make one for the Kindle version and one for the paperback, and I suppose one for the hardcover if you have that as a separate edition. But usually you wouldn't make more than one per edition.
So I'm going to just take a minute now just to share and just to encourage those that are watching and here with us today to go and check out on Kickstarter Bryan's newest release. Bryan, would you like to tell us a little bit about the new book you have going?
Sure. So I've been trying something a little bit different. I've been trying, rather than putting a pre-order on Amazon for a new book, my first ever book on Amazon advertising, I have actually done a Kickstarter, AMSads.com. And I know a lot of folks in the children's book world are very familiar. Not as many fiction and nonfiction authors use it too often. And we have a campaign with a lot of fun, different rewards with courses and postcards and other random things, all the way up to the everything package of all sorts of stuff when you pre-order the book.
I thought the $49 tier was perfect for me because I love the mini course. I wanted the paperback and I wanted all the extras that came with that level. So thank you. I can't wait to get my hands on the book and to support you in your efforts and to spread the word about the knowledge that you provide around Amazon ads and the service that you provide to authors. So this has been an amazing opportunity for us. I thank you very much for that. And I do encourage all of you that are watching to go and check out the Kickstarter. Thank you so much again. And thank you everybody for joining and helping us to spread some knowledge here for others that are working hard to get their ads and their books noticed.
And
have a wonderful evening, everybody.